ghosts and ghouls, demons and aliens, monsters and worse, only here on Ghost or What, the best channel for original scary stories. Our next story is Family Faced an Accident on a Highway. This story goes back to the time when we were young and were trying to settle in our lives. We were planning to start a family, so we were looking around for places where we could live. It was one of those times when we went to look for a house, but we got late and started our journey back after the sunset. It was a long way home, and we were too tired. We decided to play music in the car, trying to stop ourselves from falling asleep. It had been an hour since I had been driving, when all of a sudden, the car stopped. I tried to ignite it, but nothing happened. I opened the bonnet and tried to look for the problem, but everything seemed right. I closed the lid and went back inside the car and tried to start it again. Surprisingly, it started. I was amazed and confused, but did not bother and started to drive again. Suddenly, I felt the area seemed different than earlier. I asked my wife if she felt as if we were not going on the right path. She looked around and also felt that. She agreed with me that we might have been lost. I could not explain in words how terrified I was at the chance of being lost at this hour of the day. I stopped the car and tried to find the route, but there were no signals. We decided to head back as it was a highway, and we had not taken any turns, so we might have ended up on the correct route. We kept driving for another half an hour, but it looked like we were completely lost. I stopped the car, as I was afraid that the gas might end up. At that point, my wife was extremely worried, and it was quite clear on her face. I tried to remain composed as I did not want to make her more worried. I tried to look around, but could not find anything. It was darker than it should have been, and there were no lights at all. I looked at my phone, and there were no signals. I decided to give it one last try and decided to look for something. I ignited the car and started to drive again. Suddenly, I saw a car coming towards us. I was still wondering how it was coming on the same road as ours when suddenly it hit our car. I could not hold the steering of my car, and our car started to move towards the side. It felt like everything went black. I could hear my wife's screams in the background, and I wondered if my soul had left my body. I could not feel anything. When finally, everything went back to normal and I could feel the present, I realized that there was no sight of the car that had hit us. I wondered how that was possible, as it had hit us from the front, and there was no way it could have survived. I looked at my wife, and she was unconscious, but I could clearly remember her screaming. She might have hit something that had made her unconscious. I looked around myself. The front of the car was severely damaged. Our legs were stuck in the wreckage. I tried to move, but could not free myself. I looked for my phone and found it beside my wife. I pulled myself a little, and a strong shot of pain ran through my leg. I tried to move, but a loud moan came out of my mouth. I realized that my leg was broken. I gathered the courage and again moved forward with my phone, and then picked it up. I was about to dial it when all of a sudden, wind started, producing strange whistling sounds. I looked around, but everything seemed normal. I shrugged and quickly looked at my phone for the signals. Luckily, I found 2 bars. I quickly dialed 911. They immediately picked up the call and asked me for my whereabouts. I could not decide what to say, so I told her to find me along the route. After that, the signals were lost. I tried to keep myself awake in case the cops might call. I felt shivering because of my weakness. Suddenly, I felt as if someone was approaching us. I was getting dizzy, so I could not concentrate on it. But it looked like doctors, as I could see many white figures coming toward us. I felt a little relieved, but then I wondered why they were coming from such a distance. Why did they not park their ambulance right beside us? Suddenly, my brain sensed a little danger, but I was hopeless. I could not do anything. Our car was damaged, and so were our legs. I stayed in my seat and closed my eyes a little. I kept pecking at them, but it appeared as if my eyes were closed. I watched the white figures getting nearer. I noticed that the figures were like someone was wearing a white sheet over them, but those figures were floating in the air. My heart almost stopped with shock and my hands were trembling with fear. My mouth was getting dry and it felt like there were thorns in my throat. I controlled myself and watched the figures moving right beside the car. They did not stop, neither looked at us. They just walked past us. After a couple of minutes, I gathered the courage and took my phone and tried to look at the back. There was no one there. It was a long road, and they had vanished in just a few minutes. I let out a sigh. At the same moment, my phone started to ring, and it almost dropped from my hand. I picked up the phone and realized that it was from the 911 call center. What she told me next left me terrified. She informed me that they had checked the whole route, and our car was nowhere to be found. I told her that we might have lost and searched for us in the areas and roads nearby. As I was talking, suddenly the car started to shake. The phone dropped from my hand and disappeared from view. The shaking of the car was hurting my leg quite badly, but I stayed silent. I was too scared to even scream. After shaking for 5 minutes, it abruptly stopped. After a couple of minutes, the most terrifying figure came into view. It was a woman in white dress, standing right in front of me on the road. Her hair was falling loosely, and her head was tilted downwards. I swallowed my saliva as I saw that strange creature. Suddenly, she lifted her head and looked at me with the most eerie grin, and without any delay, she started running towards me. That was more than enough for me, and I fainted on that instant. The next time I woke up, I found myself on a hospital bed. I immediately asked for my wife, and they comforted me by informing me that she was in another room. I felt a little relieved and asked about everything. They told us that we were found from somewhere that was miles away from where we were supposed to be. We were in an entirely different state. I asked them about the car, and they informed us that they had seen the CCTV footage, and there was no car. We must have lost control of the car. I could not believe anything that the nurse was telling me, but then I remembered all the figures. It has been 10 years since the incident, but I still feel uneasy driving at night. We also did not purchase that house, as I had the scariest and unsettling memories with that house. Did you think that was the end? The terror never ends. Subscribe to our channel to hear more horror stories, only on Ghost or What.